The real-time studio carried its usual Friday night intensity. The panel setup, the live audience primed for whatever combination of comedy and confrontation Bill Maher would deliver. Prince Harry sat across from him, and something about the studio energy suggested this wouldn't unfold the way Harry's team had hoped. Bill opened warmly, genuinely warmly, calling Harry's appearance courageous, noting that most people in Harry's position avoided shows willing to ask real questions. Harry, visibly relieved, settled into what he assumed would be sympathetic territory. Then Bill asked about the surname considerations, about the security threats that had made headlines, about whether Harry had actually spoken to his own father since arriving in London. What Harry said made Bill's expression shift from warmth to something sharper. What Bill said after that, still funny, still direct, but building towards something that would leave the studio audience audibly reacting. And tonight, Prince Harry was about to discover exactly how that skill operated. This is the interview that shocked everyone. Subscribe now, hit that notification bell, and let's see what happened. The real-time studio had its usual Friday night atmosphere, panel discussion setup, live audience energy, the particular tension that came with knowing Bill rarely let anyone leave without genuine engagement. 24 seasons deep, renewed through 2028, Bill had built this show around one consistent principle. Ask the questions other hosts avoided, then find the comedy in whatever emerged. Harry arrived with his usual security presence, settling into the guest chair with visible uncertainty about real-time's format compared to his previous appearances. Prince Harry, thanks for coming on. I've got to say, this is genuinely brave of you. Harry's posture relaxed slightly. I appreciate that, Bill. I mean it. Most people avoid this show entirely because they know I'll actually ask things. Show something about character, choosing to be here. Let's start with something current, Bill said, maintaining his warm opening tone. You're actually in London now, staying at a royal residence. That's new territory. How's that actually going? It's been meaningful, reconnecting with family. That's good, genuinely. But here's what I'm curious about. Reports suggest you're considering changing your children's surname to Spencer, your mother's name, apparently due to passport complications. Is that actually true? Harry's relaxed expression tightened. There have been administrative delays requiring solutions. Administrative delays significant enough to abandon Sussex entirely? That's not paperwork. That's a pretty major statement about identity and belonging, while you're currently staying with the very institution whose name you'd be walking away from. I haven't confirmed anything specific. You haven't denied it either, which is its own kind of answer. Is this genuinely being considered? There's also this security threat situation, Bill continued, his tone still light but pointed. Reports about multiple terror plots targeting you specifically. That's significant, especially given you spent years claiming security concerns made visiting impossible. Now you're here anyway. What actually changed? Arrangements were more thoroughly addressed this time. Thoroughly enough that you're apparently splitting time between royal security and private arrangements? That seems inconsistent if the threats are genuinely as serious as reported. Harry shifted uncomfortably. The situation required flexibility. Flexibility that somehow wasn't available during your previous years of legal battles over exactly this issue? What specifically restored your confidence? Your father, Bill said, his smile still present, but the questions landing with increasing precision. King Charles, you're literally staying in his house right now. Have you actually had a real conversation with him? Not diplomatic photo ops, an actual conversation? We've had meaningful interactions. Meaningful how, specifically? Because from outside, this looks like years of very public estrangement followed by sudden physical proximity without much actual resolution happening. What's genuinely different beneath the surface? These relationships require time to rebuild properly. Time you're apparently not using very efficiently, given you're under the same roof and still speaking in these vague generalities. Have you addressed the specific accusations you made publicly? Or are you just occupying adjacent space, hoping that solves everything? Harry's composure cracked slightly. That's an unfair characterization. Is it? You made specific claims on international television. Now you're his house guest. Did you address those claims directly? Or is this just convenient geography without actual accountability? Your brother, Bill pressed on. William, still completely unwilling to see you from what's being reported. Accurate? Our relationship remains complicated. Complicated seems to be carrying a lot of weight in your vocabulary tonight. Simple question. Have you spoken to your brother directly, in person, since you arrived in London? Silence. That silence is fairly revealing. You're staying at a royal residence, presumably somewhat near your brother, and you haven't managed an actual conversation? That's not complication. That's ongoing estrangement despite physical closeness. These things require the right circumstances. They require actual effort, which means attempting conversation, rather than just existing in nearby spaces, hoping proximity magically solves everything. Let's discuss the actual content of what you've previously written and said, Bill continued, shifting angle. Your book made pretty specific accusations. Now that you're literally staying under the same roof as some of these people, do you stand behind everything you wrote specifically? I stood behind my experience when I wrote it. Your experience. That phrase does interesting work. Are you standing behind the specific factual claims? Because my experience language often indicates something softer than verifiable fact. What I described was real to me. Real to you isn't necessarily the same as objectively accurate, though. That's the actual distinction I'm asking about. Would you defend the specifics as factually accurate if directly challenged by the people you wrote about? Harry's jaw tightened. I won't relitigate my entire book on your show. I'm not asking you to relitigate everything. I'm asking whether you'd stand behind the specifics while literally sitting in the same house as the people you wrote about. That seems like a completely reasonable question given your current circumstances. The divorce rumors, Bill said, shifting terrain but maintaining his characteristic mix of humor and precision. They're everywhere. What's your actual response? Tabloid fiction entirely. Fiction requiring formal denial from your team. I've covered enough political and celebrity stories to know that vigorous denial often suggests something worth denying. What's actually happening? False narratives require correction. Or sometimes correction becomes necessary because there's genuine substance underneath. Which is it? Because from outside, everything about your public presentation suggests strain being carefully managed rather than genuinely resolved. Harry grabbed his water. My marriage is private. Your marriage has been a Netflix documentary with actual cameras inside your home. That's not private. That's monetized intimacy. The privacy claim doesn't really hold up given everything you've previously shared for profit. Here's what I find genuinely fascinating, Bill said, leaning forward with that particular energy preceding his sharpest observations. You came on my show specifically, a show that spent years being fairly skeptical of celebrity victim narratives. That takes either genuine courage or significant desperation. Which is it? I believe in engaging across different perspectives. That's a nice sentiment, but let's be honest. Your appearance here suggests something else. Maybe every sympathetic outlet has already extracted whatever value they could from your story, and now you're reaching toward audiences who might actually push back because there's nowhere else left to go. That's a rather cynical interpretation. It's pattern recognition based on decades of watching exactly this progression happen with public figures running out of friendly territory. You're being deliberately provocative, Harry said, his composure fully cracking now. I'm being deliberately honest, with jokes attached because that's literally my format. But underneath the comedy are legitimate questions you're not actually answering. What's your genuine relationship with your father? Are you actually considering abandoning the Sussex name? Is your marriage experiencing real strain? Every question has felt like an ambush. Every question has been direct, wrapped in enough comedy to keep this entertaining, which is literally what's made this show successful for over 2 decades. I ask things other hosts avoid, then find the comedy in the resulting discomfort. I came here expecting genuine conversation, Harry said, standing up slightly. This is genuine conversation. Genuine means asking legitimate questions and expecting actual answers rather than diplomatic non-responses. You've provided vague generalities about everything: your father, your brother, your marriage, your name change consideration. That's not engaging genuinely. That's performing engagement while avoiding substance entirely. You're twisting everything I say. I'm quoting your own non-answers back to you and pointing out their non-answers. That's not twisting. That's basic comedic technique. Finding the absurdity in evasive language by simply highlighting it clearly. This entire interview has become hostile, Harry said, grabbing his jacket. This entire interview has been exactly what I told you up front. Direct commentary with legitimate questions underneath. If asking about documented reports feels hostile, that discomfort exists because the questions are accurate, not because I'm being unfair. Harry moved toward the exit. I expected better from this show. Bill's expression remained composed, still carrying that particular mixture of amusement and precision. You expected uncritical, sympathetic coverage from a show that spent 2 decades specifically avoiding exactly that. That expectation itself was rather unrealistic, wasn't it? You called this brave initially. It was brave to show up. It's not brave to walk out the moment actual accountability arrives. Those are different things, and you're currently demonstrating the gap between them quite clearly for everyone watching. Harry paused at the studio exit. You'll regret how you've handled this. I doubt it, Bill said, leaning back comfortably. 24 seasons, renewed through 2028, specifically because I don't back down from asking direct questions, regardless of who's uncomfortable. Tonight simply continued that exact pattern. History will show a prince who couldn't handle basic questions about his own well-documented contradictions on a political comedy show. That's not particularly flattering, but it is accurate. Harry left. The studio door closed behind him. The audience sat in stunned silence before scattered, uncertain applause emerged. Bill turned to face his panel and audience directly. Well, that's certainly not the outcome his team expected when they called about booking this appearance. He adjusted his position at the desk. I want to be genuinely clear about something. I called his appearance brave initially, and I meant that. Coming onto a show that's historically skeptical of exactly his particular narrative does take some courage, or at least significant strategic miscalculation. He paused, his tone shifting slightly. But bravery in showing up doesn't excuse avoiding substance once you're actually here. Every question I asked was legitimate. Documented reporting about the surname consideration, the security situation, the actual state of his family relationships. He couldn't engage with any of it honestly. Here's what strikes me, Bill continued, his comedic timing still present, but his underlying point growing sharper. This is someone who's built an entire public identity around victimhood regarding media treatment. Tonight, he experienced exactly what fair, direct questioning actually looks like, and he couldn't handle 15 minutes of it. He gestured toward the empty guest chair. I didn't insult him personally. I didn't make anything up. I asked about documented reports and noted when his responses didn't actually address them. That's not cruelty. That's the exact same standard I apply to senators, CEOs, anyone who sits in that chair. He managed his characteristic smirk. Maybe next time someone considers booking this show, they'll understand that showing up requires actually answering questions, not just hoping the panel format and studio audience will provide cover for avoiding substance entirely. The footage aired that Friday night. HBO made no edits. The clips that spread captured the collision. Administrative delays significant enough to abandon Sussex entirely? That silence is fairly revealing. Maybe every sympathetic outlet has already extracted whatever value they could from your story. That's not twisting. That's basic comedic technique, finding the absurdity in evasive language. It's not brave to walk out the moment actual accountability arrives. History will show a prince who couldn't handle basic questions about his own well-documented contradictions on a political comedy show. Harry's team released a statement calling the interview a bad faith ambush from a host who promised genuine engagement but delivered hostile mockery. Bill addressed it during his following episode. Ambush implies deception about format. Everyone who watches this show for over 2 decades knows exactly what they're getting. Direct commentary with legitimate questions underneath. I called his appearance brave because coming on a show like this after years of managed narrative does take something. But bravery in showing up doesn't excuse avoiding every substantive question once you're actually here. He added, 24 seasons, renewed through 2028. That success comes from asking things other hosts avoid, then finding the comedy in evasive responses. Tonight simply demonstrated that formula working exactly as designed, regardless of who found it uncomfortable. For Bill Maher, the interview became another demonstration of what nearly 2 decades in political commentary had built. The ability to disarm guests with genuine warmth before methodically exposing contradictions through comedy that landed harder than direct confrontation ever could. For Prince Harry, it was uniquely damaging precisely because he'd been called brave initially, relaxed into that compliment, then discovered the conversation building towards something far more challenging than he'd anticipated. Being unable to navigate even comedically delivered accountability, walking out on one of political television's most respected panels, exposed contradictions no publicist could fully manage afterward. But for the millions who watched, something else emerged. The contrast between Bill's methodical, initially warm questioning and Harry's escalating discomfort with basic accountability told its own unmistakable story. Bill called his appearance brave. Harry relaxed into the compliment. Bill asked about the surname consideration. Harry deflected into vagueness. Bill asked about his actual relationship with his father and brother. Harry offered nothing but complicated generalities before walking out. And in that departure, in that devastating inability to sustain even initially warm conversation once actual questions emerged, everything anyone needed to know about the gap between public narrative and private reality became impossible to ignore. Some people can handle warmth followed by genuine accountability. Others prove they can only survive uncritical acceptance. Bill offered initial praise and ultimate honesty. Harry couldn't withstand the transition between them. 24 seasons of political television had asked the questions everyone else avoided. Harry chose departure over engagement. That's the whole story. Called brave for showing up. Couldn't survive 15 minutes once real questions started. What does that tell you about the difference between courage and calculation? If you want more content that recognizes when comedy reveals what hostility couldn't, subscribe, turn on notifications, drop a like, share this with someone. More commentary, more clarity, more of what nearly 2 decades in political television teaches you about separating narrative from truth. Stay with us.